Some people said it was a monstrous eel. Some people said it was a landlocked sturgeon, an ancient creature touched by dark magic. Others said it was some sort of mutant, an abomination that should never have been. All were agreed, however, fishing for the demon fish was folly. All were agreed, that is, but one. A local businessman heard the tales, reports of ducklings sucked under Deepdale Pond's surface, tiddlers hooked by local children plucked savagely from their lines. He suspected the demon fish was no more than a big pike. He took the other stories, whispers of a curse befalling anyone who hooked the demon fish, a darkness falling over them in their endeavors, as superstitious nonsense. The demon fish was a pike, and the businessman was going to prove it. One Saturday morning, the businessman, an experienced fisherman, set himself up on the bank of Deepdale Pond. The pond was big, more of a lake in truth, but he had the whole day to move up and down the waterside to search for the monster pike in every reed bed and deep pool. Dog walkers, picnickers, children with dinky little rods, all asked the businessman what he was doing with such bulky tackle as they visited the pond throughout the day. When the businessman explained that he was out to catch the demon fish, they warned him off his charge, but he would not be deterred. As night began to fall, the businessman found himself fishless and alone by the waterside. But he wasn't going to be beaten. All the visitors to the pond throughout the day, surely their clamor had simply put the big fish off, spooked it into hiding. But now it was dark and calm. The businessman might finally be able to claim his prize. Knowing now was his best chance, he reached for his bait box and attached the biggest, smelliest mackerel fillet he had onto his hook. He cast it out into the deepest part of the pond and waited. He didn't have to wait long. A monstrous take, and the businessman was in, line screeching from his reel as he fought to keep the beast at bay. It had to be the demon fish. Moving along the bank to get the best purchase and keep the fish away from snags, the businessman gave as good as he got. He wrestled the fish this way and that, all in an attempt to tire it. Minutes passed, then an hour, then longer. Still the fish would not relent. The businessman even started to doubt the fish was a pike. Pike were ambush predators, he knew, sprinters, not distance runners, and this fish had serious stamina. Just as the businessman thought he would never give in, the fish finally allowed itself to be pulled toward the bank. Even in the darkness, the businessman could see its immense flank break the surface, by far the biggest fish he had ever caught. But he couldn't quite make out what the fish was. Just a couple of feet closer, and he would have his identification. A few inches more, an inch, and then, twang! With one last burst of energy, the fish powered toward the deep water and snapped the businessman's line clean. Close, but not close enough. Back home, and without an identification, witness, or photograph, no one believed the businessman's story, and that simply would not do. Not after all he'd been through. The next Saturday he was back with better tackle and more bait. But wherever in the pond he tried, and whatever bait he used, nothing. Night brought no bites either, nor did the next morning. So the next weekend he came back again, and the next after that too. Soon he found himself fishing the weekday evenings, and then during the weekdays themselves. His business began to dwindle and then fail. He didn't care. The demon fish had won over him, and he needed to settle the score. His wife told him he was becoming obsessed. She left him. That didn't matter. The fish was more important. Soon the businessman was spending more time at the pond than anywhere else, all to no avail. Next he stopped sleeping, eating, all to give himself more time with a bait in the water. It couldn't go on. Finally, sick with exhaustion, the businessman collapsed by the side of the pond. A dog walker found him the next day, and, half dead, he was rushed to the hospital. The demon fish had won again. I sprint across the frozen ground, sucking in a lungful of icy air. I chance a glance to the east. The Prytagor-Rean sun is fast disappearing below the jagged horizon. "I see the cave," Henderson calls from behind me. "We're nearly there." On we run, bursting through the cave mouth just as the sunlight fades. Henderson turns and drags the scorched segment of the fuselage operating as our makeshift door across the opening. When darkness falls on Prytagor-U, the temperature plummets to lethal lows almost instantly. We need all the protection from the night we can get. "We cut that too fine," Henderson gasps as he switches on a lamp. "What were you doing in the wreckage for so long?" I huddle against the warm cave wall before I answer. "I was looking for food. I found some more ration packs." Henderson doesn't thank me for it. He walks over to our tired water purifier, the only reason we're still alive. He removes the canister and reaches for a couple of mess tins. A few glugs of filtered water into each, and he's crossing the cave towards me. "There's something wrong with the purifier. It's kicking out less to drink every time I run it." He hands me a tin, and I gulp down the water eagerly. Thanks to whatever geothermal processes are occurring behind the cave's walls, the water is at least a little bit warm. "What the hell are we going to do?" Henderson asks, as he squats against a flat portion of cave wall. "Soon we'll have salvaged everything we can from the ship, and then it's only a matter of time until we're out of food." I don't respond, but the planet seems to. The night winds begin to howl outside. Every night since we crash-landed, there's been a fierce gale, the likes of which would probably be called a once-in-a-generation storm back on Earth. "And what kind of stupid name is Prytagor-U for a planet anyway?" Henderson exclaims, no doubt angered by the rising winds. "It's more of a designation than a name," I answer, glad to be off the subject of the ship and what remains of it. "Some colonist, project scientist probably came up with it." "Well, I'm a scientist, and I say we should have landed on a different planet in the Prytagor-Rean system. Anything but this frozen hell." It's a long time before either of us says anything more, the hopelessness of our situation weighing heavy in the air. "We need to talk about the crash," Henderson says, breaking the silence. I shake my head. "There's nothing to talk about." "Yes," Henderson says, "there is. 35 people are dead, not to mention all the embryos. We need to talk about it." "We need to eat and then get some rest." "What's the last thing you remember?" Henderson asks. "What?" "What's the last thing you remember before the crash?" "I don't know. Being in orbit, landing prep, my memory is fuzzy." "Liar," Henderson growls. Outside, the winds surge, and our fuselage door starts to rattle against the cave mouth. "The only reason you can't remember is because you refuse to let yourself." Hearing the truth aloud forces the memories to come rushing back. "I remember sitting at the controls," I say, somehow unable to stop myself from speaking. "I remember entering the planet's atmosphere, but the ice storm, the alarms, thruster 3, it failed. I couldn't stabilize the ship." I realize Henderson is kneeling beside me now, holding my hand. Why couldn't you stabilize the ship? Don't make me say it. The wind outside is screaming bloody murder, but somehow Henderson's voice cuts through. Let it out, Clarissa. Despite my guilt, I do. When I came out of cryosleep and we entered the Prytagor-U system, my cryosickness, it didn't go away like everyone else's. And who did you tell? No one, I whimper, tear running down my face. Not even the captain. Not even you. Why not? I'm the pilot. Landing the ship was my one and only job. I didn't want to admit I was sick and let the crew down. I'm so sorry, Charlie. Suddenly, the wind outside dies. Where are we? Henderson asks, looking to the cave mouth and then back to me. I stare at him blankly. What? The crash killed everyone except for me and you. We can breathe this alien air without suits, and we don't have a scratch on us. It doesn't make any sense. So, where are we? Prytagor-U, I answer. Don't hide behind anagrams, Clarissa. Where are we? I've never been good at word games, but deep down, I already know the answer. Purgatory. The fuselage door falls and the cave mouth is open, but it's not an ice planet's hostile vista that greets me. It's a leaf-green expanse bathed in golden sunlight. I see the tree swing I used to play on when I was a little girl. We all forgive you, Henderson says softly. Even without cryosickness, there was nothing any pilot could have done in that storm with the failed thruster. It's time to forgive yourself as well. It's time to stop punishing yourself in this place and move on. My pain and guilt fading, I stand. Then I walk with Henderson into the light. She comes to bed an hour after me. I watch as she brushes her hair in the mirror. I smile as she hums some half-remembered song. As she slides beneath the covers, I think how lucky I am to have found her. I'll crawl out from under the bed once she's asleep.